Alright, so today I want to show you 24 ball pythons that you probably can't afford, and these are the snakes that start about $5,000 a piece and go all the way up to about $30,000 for one ball python. It's pretty amazing. A lot of these morphs are new on the market. They are some pretty amazing snakes. If you've never really seen the potential of the ball pythons, these snakes are probably going to blow your mind. There's some amazing combos on the market today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to Morphmarket, and essentially what I did is I started from the high end all the way down to about $5,000, and I picked out the ones that, you know, if I had an unlimited amount of money that I'd probably invest in. Pretty amazing snakes. Let's jump over and check out these awesome snakes. Alright, so I'm going to jump over here on morphmarket.com, and I'm going to start with the most expensive snake in this price range. This one is actually the Super Microscale, a fairly new morph on the market. This is essentially one of the lines of the completely scaleless ball pythons. It's a little bit different than the scaleless head that produces the totally scaleless ball python. There's some differences. And this is actually a pinstripe Enchi in a totally scaleless ball python. It's kind of interesting how the colors fade a little bit. You know, pinstripe Pinstripe's one of my favorite morphs with a really bright gold color, and it seems like when you strip away the scales you lose a lot of that gold color, which is kind of interesting. And this one actually sold for $30,000 just last year. It's pretty amazing that these snakes can sell for so much. And it's funny, the further you get into it and the more snakes that you produce, you know, like I'm producing probably about 100 hatchlings a year, and then when I sell those snakes and make the money, I reinvest into some higher end projects. So it's almost like the ball python industry kind of feeds on itself, and $30,000 is a lot of money to like a regular guy, but you know, as far as ball python breeders, you know, you're selling some snakes and you free up a lot of that money to invest in projects like this. It's pretty amazing. So the second one I want to show you is the Monsoon. The Monsoon is it's pretty new on the market. It's only been out for a few years. First produced by Dave Green, and from what I've heard, it just kind of randomly popped out this snake. It's a Monsoon. It's actually a recessive mutation. Really amazing snake. Unlike anything I've ever seen. It almost kind of looks like a granite Burmese python as far as the pattern, but this is actually a ball python. This one actually sold for $15,000. It looks like just a few months ago. Pretty amazing snake. Here's another one, probably one of the most impressive highway combos. This is actually a banana Mardi Gras. And if we actually take a look at this, this one actually sold for $10,000. Kind of crazy, but if I actually look at some of the genetics on this, this is actually an asphalt yellow belly, which is the Freeway. And the Freeway and the highways are, it's kind of tricky because they're actually allelic combinations. So for example, if you took the snake and bred it to another snake, you couldn't actually produce this unless the snake you were breeding it to either had asphalt or yellow belly in the mix. And it also has banana and enchi in it too, which is pretty awesome, making this really awesome snake. This is probably one of the most impressive snakes that I've seen over here on Morphmarket. If I had $10,000 and I was in a position to buy into a new project, I probably would invest in something like this. Here's another one that I thought was kind of interesting. This is actually an Orange Dream Black Pastel Banana, which is kind of an interesting combo. And it's, you know, you kind of look at this, this actually has cypress in it too. And I think the cypress is probably why it's driving up the price. This actually sold for $10,000. Kind of an interesting morph as far as dark morphs are concerned. And the Black Pastel is probably what's making this quite a bit darker. And then the Orange Dream brings out the brightness. And it's kind of interesting. In this one, you almost can't see the banana. Banana is usually really visually dominant, and you can almost kind of see it in there, but it's kind of an interesting mix. Sold for $10,000. Here's another one, probably one of my favorite snakes over here on Morphmarket. As a matter of fact, when I first started into ball pythons, I saw this snake and I was so blown away. I could not believe a ball python could actually look like this. This is the Panda Pied, and the Panda Pied is actually the Super Black Pastel and the Pied. So it has two copies of the Black Pastel and two copies of the recessive Pied mutation. This one actually sold for $10,000 too, and it's kind of interesting. I've seen a lot of Panda Pieds, and sometimes I don't really like where the black is placed on the white snake on a lot of these Panda Pied. Sometimes it's just one little black spot here and there. Sometimes it has a black head and a white body. And on this one, it just stood out to me as a really awesome placement of the black on the white snake. It makes for a really impressive combo. Here's another one that kind of blew me away. This is actually an axanthic clown with a few other genes on top of it. If we take a look at the genes on this actually has blade and pastel and spider on top of an axanthic clown. Pretty difficult combination to hit. It's actually a double recessive. So the axanthic and the clown, you both need 2 copies of each gene to get a visual. And with the axanthics, usually the pastel really enhances the brightness of the white on the snake. So you can see this is really white. Usually the pastel, and sometimes if you can add like fire in there, it'll also bring out, it kind of makes for a cleaner snake. And then the blade, essentially what the blade does is it reduces the pattern on the top. You can see it's really reduced, and it also has spider. So the spider is really what's making this kind of a spiderweb pattern, and then the blade really reduces it. And you can see this crazy head stamp from the clown influence. Really awesome combo. Here's another one. This is the banana clown pied. Quite a difficult combination to actually hit. This is actually a recessive pied and the recessive clown with the codominant banana on top of it. This one actually sold for $7,500 just a few months ago. Pretty awesome snake. It seems like the clowns and the pieds are really hot. They've pretty much been hot since the beginning, ever since I started into ball pythons, and they really bring a pretty significant price. Here's another one that I thought was kind of crazy. As a matter of fact, if someone handed me this snake and said, hey, guess what's in here, I probably couldn't pick out the genes. The one thing I can pick out is banana. You can definitely tell banana's in there. And it's actually the puzzle. The puzzle is, I'd say there's not a lot of people working with the puzzle. It's a recessive mutation, and it's kind of changes the pattern on the snakes. It makes some really impressive combos. And then you add pastel in with banana, I'd say. Usually when you add pastel, it's kind of hard to tell the pastels in there. Usually the pastel kind of gives you the lighter head, and then the enchi really reduces the pattern, makes for a really awesome combo. This one actually sold for $7,500, and this sold, actually the year about it looks like almost 2 years ago that sold. So the interesting thing is, looking at these prices, a lot of times the prices will come down over time. So if something sold recently, it is still pretty high in price. And if you pull out some of these old ones from even like 5 or 6 years ago, the prices are significantly higher. So I thought this was kind of interesting. This is actually a chimera, and a chimera is kind of a genetic anomaly. As a matter of fact, you probably can't reproduce this chimera breeding it to something else. And the interesting thing is, you can tell it's a chimera because of the split line right down the top of the head. Essentially what it is you get 2 fertilized eggs merging together early on and forming one individual out of 2 completely separate individuals. So essentially what it is the DNA on the left side of the snake is different than the DNA on the right side. It's almost like twins combined into one snake. And this one actually has, it looks like some paradoxing, which is kind of interesting. You get kind of unusual splotches of different colors. And I would say in most cases you can't breed it true. I'd say you probably never could breed this true. And in most cases you probably are getting a sterile snake. You probably can't breed the snake. And if you can, it'll probably be the DNA from the left side or the right side of the snake. It's kind of a 50-50 chance as far as if it's actually able to breed. This one's actually sold for $7,500, and you really want to know what you're getting into when you're getting a chimera. Essentially what you're doing is you're buying a snake for like your YouTube channel, a snake that nobody else has, a really unique individual that is pretty much pet quality only in most cases. Here is a pretty amazing snake. I've actually never seen one like this, and I saw several of them pop up when I was doing the search. This is actually a lavender albino clown with the leopard in it. It makes for a really impressive combo. I've never really seen anything quite like this. As a matter of fact, I did see a YouTube video from South Africa. They produced something similar to this, and this is, let's see, this one sold for $6,500. That is a pretty amazing snake. And matter of fact, fact, it just sold here in January 30th. That was just a few days ago, so that is pretty impressive. Here's another one, the Pastel VP Axanthic Clown, another Axanthic Clown, but this just has the pastel. Doesn't have the blade in it. You can kind of see the difference between this one and the last one. Makes for a completely different looking snake, not as clean as the other one. This one's selling for $6,500. Here's another one. This has the acid in it, which is pretty awesome. Acid is almost like a leopard, where it really shatters the pattern and breaks it up. This actually has acid and leopard in the same snake. This is one of the first times I've actually seen them both in the same snake. And then you have ante on top, which reduces the pattern even more. And then just with pastel, you would think there'd be something else in there with that kind of a crazy pattern and almost like a bright yellow. It's interesting how you mix the right genes and you get some crazy looking snake. So this one's actually ante, pastel, acid, leopard, 100% het clown. You really can't see any influence from the het clown, and possible het pied. You can't see the het pied at all. This one actually sold for $6,500. Pretty amazing. So this one is completely different than any snake that I've seen. It's almost, I'm looking at this, it almost looks like it's made out of fabric or something kind of interesting. This is actually has red stripe in it. I've actually have not really done a morph review on the red stripe. I've seen some people using red stripe with clown, making some really awesome combos. This is actually red stripe clown with lesser and the blade. So you have lesser, which is in the blue-eyed leucistic, but I'd say probably a lot of the color on the side that's getting wiped out is probably from the lesser. The blade is reducing the pattern, and you got the clown in there with a crazy head stamp. Really awesome looking snake. And this one actually sold, let's see, this one sold for $6,000. Pretty amazing. Just recently sold here in 2019. Pretty amazing. Here's another one that I thought was kind of unusual. It almost kind of looks like one of the morphs that are like kind of freckled like this. This kind of threw me off at first. This is actually the static working with the super blast and the spot nose. So the static, the acid, and the confusion all kind of shatter the patterns. Almost in some cases, you start mixing the right genes in the mix, especially if you have pinstripe, kind of forms like this spotted pattern through the snake. Pretty awesome. And this one actually sold for $6,000. This is a super pastel, spot nose, pinstripe, and static all in one snake. Pretty powerful breeder. So this one is kind of interesting. As a matter of fact, when I first started in ball pythons, I was like, man, I wish I had the money to buy this snake. And then I found later on, hey, I could probably actually make that for a lot less money. And I was kind of enamored over this snake. I did not know anything about ball pythons when I first started. And then this one posted, and I was just really just completely blown away that a snake could even look like this. This is actually the Leopard Ante Orange Dream Yellow Belly Fire. And the interesting thing is a lot of combinations. If you're looking for like a really bright yellow, a lot of times what you can do is you can add an Orange Dream on top of Yellow Belly and Fire, and like pastel, all those genes work really well together to form kind of a bright orange. And then the Leopard and Ante both work. You know, the Leopard kind of breaks up the pattern, and then the Ante reduces the pattern, and that's where you get this really amazing looking snake, all those genes working together. And this one is actually sold for $6,000. I remember when this posted, and I remember when it sold too. It actually posted in 2015, about 5 years ago, for $6,000. So here's another one that's kind of an anomaly too. This is actually a tri-stripe with the albino, and you notice the little spots all through the body. You know, I had my snake, I had my eyes on this snake for a long time too. I remember when this one first posted, and it was just kind of blew me away that any snake could look like this. And then later I found out that the black spots were actually a paradox, and you can't reproduce the black spots. But I just thought, you know, the tri-stripe and the albino, probably hands down my favorite combination of two recessive morphs. I say there's not a lot of people that are actually working with the tri-stripe. It's not very common. And this one actually sold for $5,750. First posted in 2017. Pretty amazing. And it's kind of interesting. You can actually look at some of these when they first posted and then when they last updated them as sold. So some of these, this one actually took like 5 months to actually sell. And it's kind of interesting. I've seen some snakes on here for really high dollar and they'll sell within just a couple days. It's pretty amazing. And some of them will sit on here a few months before they actually sell. Here's another one. Speaking of making an intense orange color on a snake, this is actually a pied, and then to get the really bright orange on the pied, this is actually the Super Orange Dream, and then actually if you add the yellow belly, it really intenses the orange even more, so it makes for a really awesome snake. And this one is actually sold, actually this one is still for sale, believe it or not. This is actually $5,500, you know, kind of right on the cusp of the cheapest snake in this price range. Still a little bit out of my price range. Here's another one if you're into dark morphs and pied looking morphs. This is actually the Urban Camo. The Urban Camo is, I'd say there's not a lot of people actually working with Urban Camo. It's kind of a unique combination. It's really simple. It's actually the Sandblast gene and it's just het pied. The het pied's kind of interesting because you don't need 2 copies for the visual pied, although it looks like a visual pied. It's kind of like when you breed a champagne with a pied and you get a whole clutch of champagne het pieds that all look visually like a pied, but they only have 1 copy of the pied gene. This one's actually still for sale, $5,500. Here's another one that I thought was kind of unique. This is actually an Enchi Freeway, which we consider a Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras is the Enchi Freeway, and this actually has cypress on top of it. So the Freeway is actually asphalt and yellow belly. It kind of gives this interesting snake with a dotted line right down the back. You can also do the yellow belly and the gravel to make the highway. It looks almost exactly like the Freeway. And then the Enchi makes it, well, it's kind of the nickname is the Mardi Gras, kind of reduces the pattern, and then the cypress kind of turns it into this interesting color that I've never really seen in any highway or freeway combo. So this one is pretty much the first one I've ever seen like this. This is actually a sunset with the spider gene. You know, the sunset is new on the market. They sell for a lot of money still. It's a recessive mutation, and I'd say the sunset probably is difficult to work into any other combos. It's a really visually dominant morph. Pretty much anything you work into sunset has, you know, this, you can definitely tell the sunset's in there. It's really visually dominant. And this is the first time where I've actually seen something really break up and break through the sunset pattern here and bring up some white on the sides, and that is with the spider. Makes for a really awesome combo. This one actually is on the bottom at $5,000. Here's another one that I thought was really interesting. This is actually a highway with pastel and leopard in it. Usually with the highway you have the spots, kind of like the last one we saw with the little dashes right down the center of the snake. That's kind of why they call them highways and freeways, because you have the yellow line kind of dashing right down the back of the snake. And then you add the leopard and it completely breaks it up. And then you add the pastel and it really brings out the yellow in the snake, which is really awesome. Now let's take a look at this one. This is actually one that I would probably consider buying if I had the money and if it was still available. This one sold for $5,000. And this one is also 100% het clown, which is pretty awesome. So here is a kind of a unique anomaly that I've never really seen anywhere. I've actually looked at this snake once before. This is the first example I've ever seen with asphalt and gravel in the same snake. So that's almost what I'm thinking. Probably what they did is they crossed a highway and a freeway together, which is kind of unusual. The asphalt and the gravel are 2 separate lines of almost the same thing, and normally you mix them with yellow belly to get the highways and the freeways, but I've never seen anyone actually cross 2 of them together where they get the asphalt and the gravel in the same snake, and then they add pastel on top of it. It's kind of interesting how dark this is. You know, normally it would be, you know, like a pastel highway or a pastel freeway. All this dark in here would be bright yellow, so it's completely kind of opposite to what you would think in a regular highway or freeway. Just kind of a very unusual combo. Here's another one. They're calling this one the Starburst, and this is actually, if you look at the head, you pretty much, it gives it away right from the beginning. You can definitely tell this one is another Chimera. So it's like two individuals merged together. A lot of times they'll have lines right down the head. Sometimes down the entire body you'll see, you know, half the snake is one DNA, half the snake is the other. It's kind of interesting. This has really strong paradoxing, this black coming right down the snake. You really don't see the line difference between these two. Kind of a really interesting combo. This one actually has DJI, Pastel, and albino in it. Sold for $5,000. Here's the last one I want to show you. This is the Super Gravel, which is, I'd say it's kind of a common snake. You know, the Super Gravel and the Super Asphalt seem like it would be pretty common, because keep in mind, if you breed two highways or two freeways together, you'll get Super Asphalts or Super Gravels about 25% of the time. And the Supers actually sell for an insane amount of money. It's pretty amazing. And people actually buy them. It's crazy that, you know, people are actually buying those. So this one actually sold for $5,000. Of course, this first posted in 2016. They've come down a little bit since then. And the powerful thing about this is you can actually take a Super Gravel, breed it to an Ivory, which is a Super Yellow Belly, and you would get a whole clutch of highways. All of them would be highways. Pretty powerful breeder. Alright, so there you have it. Those are 24 of the most amazing snakes that I've seen over on Morphmarket. As a matter of fact, if you're thinking of getting into ball pythons, you don't have to spend that much money. Most of the snakes are below $5,000. And it's kind of interesting watching every year people produce new stuff year after year, make some amazing combos. And when I first started in ball pythons, pretty much none of these ball pythons even existed. Every year I see some more and more amazing combos that just really blow me away every single year. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.